Today is February 9th. It's the 40th day of the year, and this is the On This Day podcast. If you've been listening from the start, some of this may sound a little familiar, and if you haven't, it'll all be new to you. Either way, enjoy the show. William Morgan is a student at Springfield College in Massachusetts when he meets James Naismith, the gentleman who invented basketball. It's 1892, and Morgan is studying physical education. Morgan, who's originally from Lockport, New York, moves to Holyoke, Massachusetts after college and takes a position as a director at the YMCA. There, he watches youngsters play Naismith's game and notices that while some kids possess the athleticism required for the sport, others don't quite have the stamina for basketball. And I don't blame him. It's just a lot of running back and forth and back and forth. But those young men still have a desire to play competitive recreational sports. So Morgan figures he can come up with an alternative game for them to play. He says, quote, "Tennis occurred to me, but this required rackets, balls, and a net and other equipment, so it was eliminated. But the idea of a net seemed like a good one. We raised it to the height of 6 feet 6 inches, just above the head of the average man." So William Morgan has the idea of a net. But what to hit over it? He tries a basketball, but it's too heavy. He tries the bladder of a basketball, but it's too light. So Morgan engages the A.G. Spalding and Brothers Company to make him a ball that is a rubber inner tube with a leather covering. And that's just right. He devises the basic rules for his new game, the object of which is to keep the ball in the air, moving from one side of the net to the other, using only your hands. And on this day in 1895, William Morgan demonstrates his new game to members of the YMCA, the game he calls Mintonette. Though his inspiration comes from basketball and then tennis, he figures the game is most closely related to badminton, thus Mintonette. It's a year later when William Morgan demonstrates it at a YMCA conference in Springfield that someone suggests a better name: volleyball. The year is 1964. President Kennedy was assassinated less than 3 months ago. For a country still coping with the loss of such a charismatic and promising young leader, tonight's event is a welcome distraction. 50,000 requests have come in for the 700 available tickets for tonight's taping of The Ed Sullivan Show. At 8 o'clock p.m. on this day in 1964, 73 million people turned their TVs to CBS to watch the Beatles' first live performance in the U.S. After advertisements for Arrow Shave and Griffin Shoe Polish, Ed announces the group that the excited studio audience has been waiting for. And the Beatles launch into All My Loving, followed by Till There Was You, and then She Loves You, accompanied all the while by the shrieking teenage girls in the audience. When the Sullivan Show comes back from commercial break, Ed brings out sleight-of-hand magician Fred Capps, who suffers through quite possibly the worst booking in entertainment history. The studio audience is still going nutso for the Beatles while other guests perform, impressionists, acrobats, the cast of Oliver, until finally Ed brings the boys back out. They finish the show with I Saw Her Standing There and their number one single, I Wanna Hold Your Hand. The show is a big hit, and it leaves a lasting impression on the American public for weeks to come, and even beyond. Pretty much every major American singer, musician, or performer that you know of from the 1970s, 80s, or even 90s has said that watching the Beatles on Ed Sullivan was the defining moment in their childhood, the moment they knew what they were born to do. Born on this day in 1846, Wilhelm Maybach Maybach is an orphan by the age of 10, and he trains as a draftsman in the design office of the engineering works connected to the House of Brothers Charitable Institute where he lives. And it's around this time, too, that Gottlieb Daimler starts working there as well. Before long, Maybach's apprenticeship is complete, and he's working directly under Daimler, who takes notice of the talent and technical ability possessed by the young Maybach. This is the beginning of a partnership that will last for the rest of their lives. Daimler moves on to a new job at the Deutz gas engine factory, and Maybach follows him. By 1873, Wilhelm Maybach is the chief engineering designer at Deutz. 10 years later, Daimler leaves the company, and once again Maybach follows. The two set up an experimental workshop outside Stuttgart where they build a prototype for a lightweight, high-speed, air-cooled combustion engine. The engine they build in 1885 has a horizontal cylinder, which limits the type of vehicles it can be installed in. So they make a version with a vertical cylinder that Daimler calls a grandfather clock engine, because it looks like a grandfather clock. They mount the grandfather clock engine in a two-wheel vehicle and make what is considered to be the first motorcycle, which Maybach takes for a test spin. Next, they install a grandfather clock engine in a stagecoach. By 1889, they make their first automobile from scratch, a wire-wheel vehicle in which Maybach installs a two-cylinder gas engine. They license their two-cylinder engine to a company in France called Peugeot, turning the ignition on the French automotive industry. I couldn't help myself with that one. More innovations follow that lay the foundation for the automobile as we know it today. Four-wheel brakes, the principle of the honeycomb radiator, fan-based cooling systems. Daimler and Maybach formed the Daimler Motor Corporation, known as DMG, in 1890. Daimler passes away 10 years later in 1900. That same year, Maybach designs a new car for Austrian dealer and race car driver Emil Jelinek that is named after Emil's 10-year-old daughter, Mercedes. The 35-horsepower Mercedes, designed by Maybach and built by DMG in 1901, is designed with a low center of gravity. It is the first modern automobile. Still more innovations follow until DMG hits hard times during the 1920s, ultimately merging with Carl Benz's automobile company to form Daimler-Benz in 1926. Wilhelm Maybach, born on this day in 1846, passes away in 1929. In his 83 years, he never once owns an automobile. And passing away in 2010, American inventor Walter Frederick Morrison. When Fred is 17, he's invited over to his girlfriend Lou's house for Thanksgiving. After dinner, everyone heads out into the yard and someone starts tossing around the lid from a can of popcorn. They throw it back and forth, and the lid gets pretty dented up pretty fast. But that's okay, because the cake pans seem to fly better. It's not too long before Fred and Lou are selling flying cake pans on Santa Monica Beach. The cake pans are put back in the cupboard during World War II, but after the war, Fred is back at it, designing a disc he calls the Whirl-Away. A few years later, he's molding the discs in plastic and selling them as Pluto platters with his, by then, wife, Lou. In 1957, Fred is approached by a company that makes slingshots used for hunting small game, a company called Whammo. They want to expand into sporting goods, and they think Fred's platter would be a popular seller. But they want to change its name. The folks at Whammo have noticed that college students on the East Coast for a while now have been playing a game tossing around empty pie tins that they call Frisbees, because the pies are from the Frisbee Pie Company in Bridgeport, Connecticut. Whammo likes that name. Fred thinks the name is terrible. But he defers to Whammo and takes out a patent on his flying disc, and over the years earns more than $1 million in royalties. In 2007, he says, quote, The world has changed a lot in the last 50 years, but the original purpose of Frisbee has remained constant. Just seeing the smile on a child's face as he or she catches a soaring disc on a summer afternoon in the park, or a grown-up diving headfirst to grab a falling disc. That is what the spirit of Frisbee is all about. Fred Morrison passes away on this day at the age of 90 in 2010. There are 325 days left in the year.